And put your hands together for this very exciting evening. Here they are, Lilli Carre, Brian Evenson, and Jesse Buck. They're going to work it out now, and then we're going to start.
We're discussing whether it would be best to proceed by reading from the text or by talking about the text. The text is a series of deaths. This poor guy named Henry King repeatedly dies in more and more gruesome and strange and existential ways. So maybe we'll begin with some reading.
Yeah.
And then you'll know what we're talking about. So that'll be good.
And you can see behind us so Lilli did all the images for the book, and you can see at least one of those behind us.
They're moving.
They're moving. Okay. Do you want to just take turns?
Okay, you begin.
Henry King woke with a hammer partway through his head. Someone pulled the end of the hammer out of the hole and then brought it down again, causing Henry's body to shake a little all over, especially at the extremities.
Henry King was found by his dog, who later ate him. The dog escaped out a window and made his way west.
Henry King's costume was exhibited at the zoo where he died. Never wear such clothing at the zoo, a sign said.
Henry King fell from an open window. A girl was telling a joke about a platypus. It was an extremely funny joke, and many kept laughing, even when they saw what had happened.
Henry King realized mid-leap that the other building's roof was in fact much farther away than he'd realized.
Henry King's costume was exhibited at the zoo where he died. Never wear such clothing at the zoo, a sign said.
Henry King discovered that the inside of Henry King looks like any meat one might find in a butcher's shop. He smiled wryly and perished.
Henry King climbed a ladder, and then it began to rain. By chance, all the rain went into his mouth, and he drowned before he could fall.
After several narrow escapes and a harrowing experience with a man holding under his arm what Henry initially thought was a soccer ball, but quickly realized was a human head, Henry King stumbled through the jungle and onto the airstrip. Crouching, he ran across the tarmac and clambered into the plane's wheel well. At last, he was safe. A few minutes later, the plane took off and the wheel crushed him.
Henry King reached into his bag. "I believe this is what you're looking for." The man with the pale shadow flayed Henry then and there. The flaying was painful, and it took quite a while. "That's what it is," thought Henry, dying. "That's what it is. His shadow, too, is wearing a shadow made of skin."
An angel came to Henry King in a dream and showed him his eternal lot. A sun black but shining, a cataract of blood shot through with fire. "And what is this a metaphor for?" asked Henry King. "It is no metaphor," said the angel. "And when shall it befall me?" asked Henry King. "Now," said the angel, and reached down his throat and tore out his heart.
His last memory as Henry King was the stick coming down towards his face. It was followed, as if without transition, by the smiling face of a nurse, but by then he had lost track of his name and never quite managed to retrieve it.
Should we stop there? So that gives you a sense of kind of what we're doing with this book, which is we're repeatedly killing Henry King over and over again. Because why? Why are we killing him over and over again? He deserves it, I guess, in some way or another.
But in most books, you're waiting for the death to happen. So we figured we'll just give you all the death.
Right. So the death never stops happening in this book, and Lilli also in the images for the book made sure that the death keeps on happening there as well. So, we can talk, because of the kind of book this is, we thought we might just spend more time talking about how it came together and how we ended up doing it, and then answer questions. Do you want to start with that?
Well, I had forgotten the way that it originally began, and then you were mentioning earlier.
Oh, so Jesse and I have known each other for a while, and one day Jesse sent me a text message, which we talked about collaborating for a while on a project. And he sent me a text message that said, one, his name is Henry King. Two, he dies over and over again. And then we started sending these deaths back and forth to one another, mainly when we were in department meetings. So we would kind of be distracted and not wanting to listen to what was going on in the meeting, and would send one another a death by email or by text back and forth.
And often we would write even not just one, but like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So it would be,
Depending on how bad the meeting was.
Yeah. So I would receive these and myself perhaps be sitting in a meeting and reading them and giggling and then trying to respond.
Yeah, we seem to, for some reason, be in meetings at the same time. But we just kept on sending them back and forth. And I think for a long time it was just an act of friendship, because that's what friends do. They send deaths back and forth to one another. And then at a certain point, either you did something or I did something that one the other of us found startling. And then I think that changed our focus or our attention and made us think about the project in a different way.
And I think part of the core of it is that literature should be playful, however serious it is. You could say the degree to which it can be bent is the degree to which it can be serious. So it has to be playful in order to be serious. So the question is then, if you have to sit down to work, how can you make it playful? And so this was something that was inherently playful. And then as we began to sort of compete in sending them back and forth, it became deeper. The waters became deeper.
Yeah. And so at a certain point we started thinking this might be a book. And I think that was the point where you suggested getting Lilli involved in the process.
Because we were thinking maybe we could bring images in. But then the difficulty of bringing in images is that you don't always like the work that a person would do. But of course, I knew her and her magnificent work, and so...
And I read her book, I read the book, the Fantagraphic stuff as well, so...
And so it seemed she would be the perfect choice, so I sent her the stuff and really hoped that she would agree.
Yeah, I agreed. And at first, it was kind of hard coming up with imagery because there's so many of these that really, like kind of how you imagine the costume in the zoo. Like that one can't be illustrated because so much lies in like imagining what that could possibly be. So it was hard kind of choosing which ones to add another layer or like try and find humor in drawing and how drawing would complement the absurdity of some of these deaths. So about half of them I think are illustrated, and also choosing a style was kind of tricky too. And I tried a few different things, and then I was looking at this book that Jesse actually gave me, I forget, like a few years before, something like that, that was a book of New England gravestone rubbings from the 1800s. And that was really great, just thinking of like these odd, they were very goofy and serious at the same time, and like trying to abbreviate a life in this like funny little image with certain kind of iconography. I thought that was a good place to start with thinking of how to approach choosing a style and pairing imagery with these stories. So that was the source. Can I ask a quick question? You said the word compete. Did you guys think of competing as you wrote these, or how much did that dictate what you wrote?
For me, a competition in the sense that when someone does something that is more interesting than what had previously been done, it kind of, you can no longer go and do the old thing again. Now you have to improve and do something more, I guess, it's something that's more deeply complicit with the horror of existence.
Yeah, I think I just think that there were moments when the stakes felt like they were raised, where we went from feeling like we were just doing something to entertain ourselves when we were having to go through faculty meetings to starting to feel like we were the other person would do something that you think, oh, this could actually be something interesting, and then that would make you try to make it more interesting. So it was less competition and more provocation, I guess, in some ways. Yeah.
Here's one, for instance, where the knowledge of the book itself existing seems to be taken into account, and I think previous to this one, It had not yet been taken into account. So Henry King wore a special shirt for people who may be one day kidnapped. This made him more comfortable in day-to-day life. He bought special shoes for people who need to survive short falls. He wore an actual helmet. He covered his crotch with a semi-articulated neoprene and steel codpiece. This odd appearance was sufficient to provoke a mob in Buenos Aires, where he was killed while attempting to enter a soccer stadium. 30 people stood on his head until it was flat. They left his body alone. So this, I don't remember, this is a funny thing. I don't know which ones I wrote and which ones Brian wrote. We forgot this. But whoever wrote this one has begun to have a sympathy for poor Henry, maybe to feel bad about continually killing him and to try to give him protective garments.
Which doesn't help at all, right?
It makes it even worse.
Right. Yeah, I think at a certain point we were playing with each other's voices as we were writing them and responding to what had come before. And so there are a lot of these that I have no idea who wrote them. If it's me or Jesse kind of mimicking me, or Jesse mimicking me, mimicking him, or it gets very arcane in some ways.
And there's this vast literature of death that is fun to play with. Like this one, number 30. You have this boatman, Charon, who's ferrying people across the river, and you have to have a coin when you come to him. And so Henry King argued fruitlessly with Charon. I have no money. You must have some money. I have no money. You must have some money. I have no money. You must. And so that's, you get to engage. The pleasure of this book then is that this form which we created allows us to, we always have, sitting on the toilet, you have funny thoughts about the boatman of death, but there's just nowhere in life to use it. And now suddenly here's this place where you can use these funny thoughts.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
I'm curious about Henry King, the name and the character. Isn't it from like an old song or something like this? Where did you come up with the name?
I guess it just seemed like the most, in all different languages, the king in various forms is one of the most common, because everyone wants to be king-like or whatnot. So Henry King just seemed like the most basic name, like John Smith or something like this, except that everyone hates kings, right? We all hate kings. So it gives an excuse for victimizing him as well. Yeah. And then there's Henry VIII, and he does all these things to his wives, and so we want to punish him a little.
Yeah, there's a couple that play with on Henry King versus King Henry in the book as well. Yeah, I do think that was what it was. I think you just came up with the name, is my memory, and then I just went with it. So.
I don't know why I thought it was from an old song, but
I'm sure there's an old song.
with a Henry King.
Absolutely, there must well be.
Do you guys have any questions?
Did any deaths not make the final cut?
Did they?
I think they all are in here.
I think they're pretty much all in there. I think some changed a little bit as we worked on them, but I think they're all in there, and I think they're roughly in the order that they were written in. So that was part of it, is that we did feel that they did start to feel different over time as we kind of entered in the project. So I think it made sense to put them in that order. I think there probably were. I think I had a couple that I started and never sent to you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and because they weren't doing what I wanted to do. Henry King was not dying in a way that was interesting to me. But other than that, I think we just kind of went ahead with it. And I might have rearranged the order. Like if I was sending Jesse 3 or 4, I would sometimes rearrange the order of those 3 or 4. But I think the chronology is pretty much there.
I think so.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask if each of you could kind of speak to a favorite contribution of one of the others, but it seems like you kind of confused that with time, and that's probably...
Yeah, we have no idea.
Okay, so then my backup question then is just the relationship with Uncivilized books and choosing to publish this through them and how that came about and how it fit with them and what you'd say about them, I guess.
Do you want to... So I had a relationship with Uncivilized Books. I'd done a book. I've done a couple things for them. I co-translated with my daughter 2 David B. books for them. And so like the kind of Tom Kay, who works there, knew who I was. And then I'd also written a short monograph on Ed the Happy Clown, the Chester Burns, Chester Brown books. Thank you. Am I confused?
No, Chester Brown.
Chester Brown. And so I kind of had a relationship, and I knew that Tom was really, he makes these beautiful books. He does a really good job with his books, and he'd been a finalist for Ignatz a bunch of times for book design. And so I thought that might be a good place to approach, and you know, we sent it to him, and he was like, this is kind of a comic and kind of not a comic at the same time, but he was interested in kind of expanding the notion of what comics are. So we kind of went ahead with that. But we thought about other places as well. McSweeney's published a selection of these in their last issue, and ultimately, I mean, it was great to work with Tom, but the way the press works, everything is perpetually delayed. So it did actually take about a year longer than we thought it was going to take for the book to come out.
Or 2, or 3.
Maybe 2 or 3. Yeah. And so that was the frustration. There were moments when we were not sure the book would come out. But I'm really happy with the way it looks at this point. You know, I don't want to say whether the wait was worth it or not, but it was just, the wait was the wait, and I'm happy with where we ended up with it.
One of the things that was important too is that the images not so much be like illustrations per se of the things, but be playful in their own right and constitute something that would be strong enough to stand against the text as a whole, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the day when we started to get the images, when you were sending them to us, we were just overjoyed.
Yeah, we're very happy with the images, and then Tom knew your work as well, and so he was keen on the idea of working with Lilli, so that was part of it. So. But it is it's something. I think it's a little bit out of their wheelhouse in that it's text and image versus a kind of organic combination of the two necessarily. So, but he, you know, we were willing, or I was willing. I think I pushed you guys to move in that direction.
Well, I think, yeah, what's nice about Uncivilized books and working with a smaller comics publisher like that is just how much attention, even though it did take a long time, like they do put like love into the books, and each one feels kind of like a special thing that they put into the world. So that felt like a good fit.
So how long a period of time did you exchange? How long did this take place, and how much time did you have to do the illustrations? Were you doing them as they were creating the stories in an organic process, or?
I think we finished it by the time I gave it to Lilli. How long did we take?
I was trying to remember this. I was thinking maybe 2010 to 2012 or something like this.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I would say a year and a half to 2 years. And you know, it's not in terms of actual word count. That's pretty small per day, I guess. But you would come in kind of bursts, I think. So.
Well, and it wasn't writing a book at the time. It was just this type
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
And then we realized that there's a substantive amount of them.
So I would wake up in the morning, and Jesse would have sent me some deaths, and then I would think about them through the day, and then I would send him back some deaths, and then eventually, we decided it was a book and approached Lilli. So, and you probably, how long did you spend working on it?
I feel like I took a while. I feel like Jesse kept asking me about it, and like I was trying different styles and just trying to figure out what would work. So yeah, I don't know how long I took, but not as long as the publisher.
You had different ideas initially for,
stylistically,
It's interesting. Different. I think the poise of drawing is different from the poise of text, you know, and what's excluded and what's included. And so to find a balance that is the text here is it's certainly ironic at times, but it's also serious enough that it should be felt. And so I think the grave rubbings really are the perfect balance for that. because of course as silly as these little angels are, like, you know, if someone has committed suicide, there's a grave rubbing with one of the wings is across the face because the angel's ashamed of itself or whatever, you know, that's on someone's grave. It's the real grave, but it's also totally comedic, you know. And so I thought it was a perfect balance.
Yeah.
Did you share these with anybody while you were corresponding?
I would read some of the ones that you would send to somebody if I thought they were very funny. You know?
Yeah, I did sometimes. I shared some with my I think we started working on these before I was married, but the woman who I was dating, who I ended up marrying, shared some with her. And some of them are very, you know, brutally funny. So yeah, occasionally we'd share them. Yeah, I wouldn't share them with my grandfather or anything like that, because probably would kill him. But yeah.
My kids love this book. Just kidding.
That really worries me.
How are the rubbings done?
So they're not, these aren't real rubbing. Yeah, these, I started doing hand-drawn stuff for things and it didn't really work, and then it's sort of a combination of drawing and different kind of layers digitally. So I like scanned certain textures of things that were done physically, but then also drew and like played around with things in Photoshop and stuff. So it's kind of half analog, half digital kind of thing. Yeah.
Is there a death that you're all most afraid of happening to you?
I mean, that probably is the death that's not in the book, I would guess. I mean, the deaths are fairly absurd in most ways. I mean, there are a couple of deaths where he thinks he's escaped something and then he ends up encountering death anyway. And that's something that probably does terrify me a little bit. So, like, there's one. This is on page 58. Henry King had seen the open manhole from some distance away. Must be careful, he thought, remembering incidents from his pasts. He approached the manhole slowly, always keeping it inside, and then very cautiously stepped over it and into the path of the speeding bus. So that kind of thing of like where you're being so careful to avoid death and death gets you anyway is something that I personally find probable and worrying.
The apathy of the onlookers is often disturbing.
Yeah.
Which I imagine is realistic. As we went on, you'll notice that they become longer and longer towards the end, which is kind of the necessity of having to complicate them based upon the previous work.
Is there one that you like drawing the most?
I don't know. I don't know if one stood out as like especially pleasurable. There's some that like were on that line of like they could stand alone because they're so descriptive.
I like
the outfit.
this one a lot.
Oh, and that's the last one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It had to be. Yeah, there's more pressure on that one. But I think, the back one I really did enjoy, the broken back. I think things where I really got to play with this sort of cartoonish body.
This one was really great.
Henry King inside of the bear.
I like drawing this back a lot. That might be a favorite. But yeah, no
That just
official
looks like
canon.
my normal back.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have one. Oh, do you have one?
Oh, yeah. First off, it's great that this is the Day of the Dead. Like yesterday was for children, and this is to remember adults, and everything fits into that. Jesse, you said that as it went along, you felt you two started to feel that it was more serious. And you also said it's sort of usually you wait for a death at the end of a novel or the end of the play, and here you're just doing it from the beginning. And I wondered sort of kind of what you started to understand or learn, or how it became more serious. Is if you ever, because there's a feeling here of kind of if you repeat it often enough, you will conquer death, or you will, So I wondered what kind of understanding you got there.
Well, some of it is the technical pleasure of the thing, because it's sort of an inside joke, you know. When it begins and the inside, a joke is made, and then someone else repeats it with a variation, and then someone else repeats it, and as we go on, you could say the lexicon that surrounds it gets deeper and deeper, so that affords more opportunity for this reflective kind of irony and play. And so that deeper vocabulary, it means that more subtle things can be attempted, you know, and yet, of course, they should not seem to be more complicated than the original one, because it's supposed to be this thing that's a joke that's whispered in someone's ear. You know, it should never cease to be that.
There is almost like a Groundhog's Day quality to some of these, where he's going through the same thing and remembering at certain points his pasts, but still unable to escape it. And I think for me, ultimately, at the end of the book, he becomes not quite reconciled to the experience, but reaches a strange kind of comfort with the fact that, you know, this might potentially go on forever for him.
How did we know it was the end?
I don't know. We decided it was the end. We both kind of just decided that was the end when that last one was written.
So the last one was just, it seemed appropriate.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you wrote it or I wrote it.
I don't remember. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah. Okay. All right. No problem.
You said at some point you realized there was a book in there, but at what point did the change come after that realization?
Yeah, do you want to answer that? It is a good question.
I think it was not much longer after that, because it was really, we thought, oh, there might be enough of these to actually make a book, and then at that point there was already 80 or 90 of them, or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it was probably pretty close that we finally decided that this. But I think that, I mean, it always felt like play, and it was always fun to do. But I think there's a point where the play felt more serious, and that I think was part of the idea that this might not just be might be for more than just us. So that I think was moving towards the idea of a book.
And all the time that we were working on this thing, we were writing other things during those years. So from 2010 to 2012, the other books were written.
Yeah.
Hello. I remember him. So was there any point during the development of these where you actually talked about kind of the theory that was kind of developing behind them beyond that first text, or did that remain as this developed into more itself? Did it remain kind of two rules?
No, I don't think we talked about it at all.
But we're just so in sync as human beings that we both knew exactly what the other was thinking at all times.
That's right.
No, I don't think we did, but I do think we. I felt like I could tell by the gestures of the ones that he was sending to me that we were enough on the same page in terms of what we were doing that in a way it didn't need to be asked. So, and there is, and in a process like this, when you're collaborating with someone, there is this kind of element of trust, or and even when we turned it over to Lilli, the idea that we were just excited and trusted what she would do with it and how she would add to the project. So.
And I think partly why we have difficulty identifying which ones I wrote, which ones you wrote, is because the entirety of the previous usage is the rule set. Like the first time, the whole of the first one is the rule set. When you get to the third one, the first two are the rule set. When you get to the 51st, the first 50, that is the rule set, and all things within it pertain to the creation of more. So it's not like this one is mine, this one is yours. The whole thing is just, like if we're all trying to have a game where we name animals, it's not like this is my animals, it's your animals.
It takes a long time to run out of animals. And we also, I don't think we didn't end because we ran out of deaths.
No.
I think there's lots more deaths there, but it felt like it had a natural arc to it.
Did you, and once the competing kind of entered the picture, did you ever find yourself sitting down and researching crazy ways to kill him? Or was it all from your imagination? Or did you have to back check it all?
I actually think that most of that stuff is already in my imagination. I don't remember actually researching anything. I mean, there were lots of moments when I would kind of half remember something, and kind of pursue it and just see where it would go. But I think generally, no, it wasn't really research based so much as just kind of, yeah.
Yeah, no research, just pleasure. Not that research can't be pleasure. Of course it can.
Did you travel around to grave sites all around the country?
How do you guys survive your faculty meetings then?
That's actually a really good question. You're on leave, so you can survive in that way. I just draw drawings over and over again. So Janet, who's in the faculty with me, watches me draw these drawings, and they get more and more aggravated as they go along.
He's pretty good.
I'm not that good. One or two more questions, and then we can call it if you guys want. We're happy to sign books. And I think this is the only time all three of us have ever been together.
This is the first time.
It may never happen again. So if you want books signed, this is not a bad time to do it. Any other questions?
I have one question. I just wanted, you said you played around with a bunch of styles, and I just wanted to know how you arrived at the style that you used for the book, and what styles you were playing around with.
Well, it's kind of like what I was saying before, of like looking at this book of gravestone rubbings and then thinking that was identifying that as like a good style to jump off of. So it's kind of like mimicking the ways that, not just the texture, but like some of the iconography and some of the ways that the faces looked, and just this sort of how things look in a more like stone carving kind of a little bit more minimal way than some of the other line drawing things I've been playing with. So I've been doing some like 2-color illustrations that look like kind of older printing methods that, just play with 2 colors, really bold kind of shapes, kind of 50s illustration style in a way, and some more like elaborate line drawing things. But it was hard drawing a character that's kind of open-ended in these ways, so I didn't want to get too specific with drawing a certain person who also seems to change age, and there's all these other kinds of elements that I didn't want to like nail down too much. So in this more reduced style, it could still kind of like feel coming from the same place and be referencing these gravestones, but not be too specific about the character.
I remember some of the early drawings and really liking them, but also when you started doing the ones that end up in the book, thinking, oh yeah, that really does, I like that better. I mean, they really did kind of bounce it nicely off the text.
Well, thank you.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.